Rain drummed softly on the cemetery tents as I stood beside the casket, feeling the chill seep through my black shawl. Most people whispered condolences. Some even reached for my hands. But their voices faded into the same blur that had followed me since Gordon's last breath. My husband of 42 years was gone, and with him, the calm rhythm of a life I once understood. Nathan, my son, stood stiffly in the front row, shoulders trembling under the weight of grief. His wife Mira, however, did not share that heaviness. She stood beside him with pristine makeup and dry eyes, her gaze moving from guest to guest, as if scanning an audience instead of mourning a man who devoted his life to this family. Her expression never softened, not even slightly, when the priest spoke of Gordon's generosity, or when the final prayer echoed across the cemetery. I watched her jaw clench beneath the sheer veil she wore. Something in her posture snapped cold as the mud beneath our feet. That was the first moment I understood. She wasn't grieving. She was waiting. The ride back home confirmed it. The city washed past the car windows in silver streaks as rain slid down the glass. I sat alone in the back seat, my fingers tightly wrapped around the locket Gordon gave me on our 10th anniversary. Mira drove with one hand and scrolled her phone with the other, barely glancing at Nathan, whose silence filled the car like fog. When we turned onto the familiar oak-lined driveway, my heart tightened. Gordon and I built our home here, filled its walls with laughter, music, and memories. Today, it looked strangely foreign. The car stopped. I stepped out and froze. My 3 suitcases sat under the dripping porch roof, already soaked through, lined neatly beside the garage door like discarded donations. Dust clung to their sides, as if someone had set them out long before we left the cemetery. Mira stepped out of the driver's seat without hesitation. "You'll be staying in the lower room for now," she said lightly, as if announcing dinner plans. "We've reorganized the house." Nathan didn't look at me. That hurt more than the rain. I walked toward the garage, the water soaking through my shoes. Inside, the small storage room smelled of cold air and rust. A thin folding cot waited in the corner. A box of dog food sat beside it, placed there intentionally. I knew. I did not cry. Instead, I sat on the edge of the cot, feeling the weight of the storm and the weight of truth settle over me. They thought they had pushed me down. They had no idea I was only beginning to rise. Because in the shadows of that cold room, I remembered a secret Gordon left behind. One that could turn every plan Mira had crafted into ashes. The first night in that damp storage room felt like stepping into a different lifetime. The ceiling leaked in one corner, each drip tapping like a slow heartbeat against the concrete. The small window, barely larger than a shoebox, looked directly at the trash bins, their metal lids clattering whenever the wind shifted. I wrapped my shawl around my shoulders and sat at the edge of the cot, letting my pulse settle. I remembered Gordon's last words to me in the hospital. "If anything ever turns against you, Cass, stay quiet, stay observant, and stay ready." At the time, I didn't understand. Now I did. By dawn, Mira's heels were already clicking across the kitchen floor upstairs. When she opened the garage door, steam from her coffee dripped inside like a greeting from a world I no longer belonged to. "You should help with breakfast," she said casually, not meeting my eyes. "Nathan has a meeting at 8. Her tone wasn't rude. It was indifferent, like someone directing the household help. I nodded slowly and followed her upstairs. The kitchen was spotless, almost sterile. Mira had arranged ingredients with the precision of a chef, preparing for a photo shoot. Eggs for Nathan, fruit slices for the kids, a multi-grain toast for herself. A handwritten schedule was pinned to the refrigerator, timed to the minute. Breakfast, 6:20. Kitchen cleaned. 6:45. Laundry sorted, 7 o'clock. No, please. No, thank you. Only instructions. As I worked, Mira paced nearby, whispering into her phone. Her voice drifted in and out, but one sentence landed sharply. The home in Dallas would be cheaper than keeping her here. Yes, I'm serious. Nathan doesn't need to know yet. The knife paused in my hand. A cheaper home? A cheaper option? A cheaper place to put me away. I breathed in slowly and continued slicing the fruit. Later, when the kids went to school and Nathan left for the office, the house fell quiet. I carried a basket of laundry to Mira's dressing room. The moment I stepped inside, her world revealed itself in glossy rose designer dresses, arranged like museum pieces. Perfumes lined in perfect symmetry, heels polished to glass. As I reached for a blouse, a paper slipped from her vanity and drifted to the floor. I bent to pick it up, automatically, and froze. Credit card statements, spa retreats, private clubs, a $3,000 wellness trip, a $1,200 skin therapy session. All this while Nathan claimed their finances were tight. I didn't take a single document. I didn't move anything. I simply noted it all in the small leather notebook Gordon had given me years ago. Page after page, I wrote, Mira researching elder care homes in Dallas, spending thousands monthly on retreats, secret meetings, unexplained withdrawals. Each detail was a thread. And threads, when pulled together, exposed the whole tapestry. But the real unraveling began the day I followed Mira to the Serenity Spa, where she wasn't meeting an instructor, but a man whose presence would reveal everything she'd been hiding. The next Thursday morning, Mira announced she was heading for a wellness session, tossing the words casually over her shoulder as she adjusted her earrings. Nathan kissed her cheek, completely unaware of the lies slipping past him like silk. I wiped the counter, nodded politely, and watched her leave. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I slipped on my coat and followed, not too close, not too far. Years of being a wife to a businessman had taught me the rhythm of shadows. She drove across town to a place called Serenity Spa and Lounge, a luxury retreat, hidden behind frosted windows and bamboo plants. But something was off. Wellness spas didn't have private security near the entrance or tinted glass on every room. Mira stepped out of the car, smoothing her hair, and walked inside with a confidence that didn't come from yoga classes. I parked 2 streets over and walked the rest of the way. Inside, the lobby smelled of jasmine and warm eucalyptus. A woman behind the counter smiled at me politely as I pretended to search for my membership card. That's when I saw them. In a dim corner, Mira sat across from a man in a navy suit. Tall, well-groomed, the kind of smile that belonged to someone used to manipulating numbers and people. He leaned close, speaking in low tones. Mira laughed lightly, placing her hand on his wrist, gesture far too intimate for a wellness consultant. Curiosity sharpened into certainty. I slipped behind a row of tall indoor palms, quiet as breath. When Mira opened the brown envelope, he slid across the table. The light caught the papers inside. signatures, highlighted lines, something resembling legal forms. I didn't need to read the words to know. This wasn't yoga. This was business, and not the innocent kind. The man who I later learned was named Derek Lowell touched her shoulder, whispering something that made Mira smile with satisfaction. She signed a page and handed it back. A document exchanged. A deal sealed. A betrayal confirmed. I raised my phone, pretending to check the time, and pressed record. A few seconds of video, enough to capture their closeness. The envelope, their signatures, enough to unravel 2 lives if necessary. When Mira stood to leave, I slipped behind a passing group and exited out the opposite door. I watched her from a distance as she stepped into her car, adjusting her lipstick with a smugness I had never seen before. That evening, she returned home glowing with false innocence. "I feel so refreshed," she said as she placed her gym bag on the counter. "Maybe I'll start going twice a week." "Good," I replied softly. "Routine can be helpful." She didn't notice the weight behind the words, but someone did. Nathan entered shortly after, drenched from an unexpected rain shower. He looked at Mira, then at me, confusion flickering across his face. Something in the air had shifted, and though he couldn't name it, he felt it. What he didn't know was that the next morning, everything would collapse, because the documents Mira signed weren't just proof of deceit. They were the beginning of a storm that would tear the truth wide open. The next morning dawned quieter than usual. A strange stillness floated through the house, like the air was holding its breath. I brewed a cup of tea and waited at the dining table. The notebook Gordon left me resting beside my hands. I didn't have to wait long. At 8:12, sharp, a knock thundered at the front door. Mira emerged from the hallway in a panic, still tying her robe. Who on earth? But she didn't get to finish. Nathan opened the door, and 2 men in polished suits stepped inside, flashing badges. Their expressions were serious, precise. The kind of faces that didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Mrs. Míralo-san," one of them asked. Her breath hitched. "Yes. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding financial discrepancies linked to your joint accounts and an investigation into fraudulent transfers made over the past 4 months. Nathan's eyes widened. Fraudulent what? The color drained from Mira's face. There must be a misunderstanding. I don't handle finances. Nathan knows that. But Nathan was no longer looking at her. His gaze dropped to the bag she clutched, where the corner of a familiar brown envelope peeked out. The envelope from the spa. He snatched it from her hands before she could react. Paper spilled across the floor, loan agreements, unauthorized withdrawals, signatures forged under Nathan's name. The final page showed a planned transfer to an account under the name Derek Lowell, the man she had met. "What is this?" Nathan whispered, betrayal tightening his voice. "Mira, how could you?" She stammered, reaching for excuses. 4 lies, anything that could soften the blow. But every word tangled into another knot. I stepped forward quietly. "There's more." From my notebook, I slid the printed screenshots, the notes, and the brief clip I recorded at the spa. The investigators examined them, murmuring to each other as they pieced together the timeline. Nathan stared at me with a question trembling in his eyes, not anger, but guilt. "Mom, how long have you known?" "Long enough," I said softly. But I waited so the truth would reveal itself fully. You needed to see it without my voice coloring it. Tears pooled in his eyes. Real ones this time. He had been blind, but not cruel. The investigators escorted Mira out moments later. She thrashed, screaming accusations at me, calling me manipulative, ungrateful, deceitful, yet the only sound that truly echoed through the hallway was the click of the handcuffs locking shut. When the door closed behind them, silence returned. Not the cold silence of before. This one carried peace. Nathan collapsed onto a chair, covering his face. Mom, I'm so sorry. I let this happen. I didn't see. I placed a hand gently on his. You see now? And that's enough. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the oaks Gordon planted decades ago, Nathan approached me again. His voice was steady, resolute. You're not staying in that room anymore. You're coming back upstairs. This is your home. I looked around the house and breathed. For the first time since Gordon's passing, it felt like it belonged to me again. Because sometimes, rising from the darkness isn't about fighting loud battles. It's about waiting, watching, and letting the truth expose itself in daylight. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people remember. No matter how old you are, it's never too late to stand up for yourself.